Try again. Maybe Twitch will behave now. Yes, now Twitch is behaving. That's good. It wasn't before. All right. Here we are. Hello. Hello. Yeah, so I'm going to try and do something shorter than last night. Because I'm starting later than last night, that's for sure. Okay. Maybe I'll make a nice little launch vehicle or something. Let's see what. Yeah, I mean, it is late, but my brain kind of broke, so I couldn't work anymore. I was planning to just work until I went to bed, but my brain kind of broke, and then I couldn't work anymore, so I figured I'd do a little of this and then go to bed. Yeah, that's. Sorry. Stretch a mangonel to fit that land. You mean the lander I made yesterday? I mean, that was like 150 tons. That's. I don't think stretch is the right word when you're talking about an 8x increase in TLI capacity. Remember, at best, that trebuchet can toss about 20 tons TLI, and you're talking about 100 and even with that Hydrolox thing, it was 90. So that's really a bit much. We'd have to design an. I mean, we could design something to loft it, but it would probably involve something like a single space shuttle main engine for the translunar injection stage, and then probably 5 of them for our equivalent of the S2 stage, and then we'd probably want something like something on the order of 8 or 9 RD-170s for the first stage. So literally double a Saturn V. Because, of course, the SSME has about twice the thrust and a little more specific impulse than a J2. So we're basically swapping. We're basically doubling everything. Yeah. 200 tons TMI is probably equivalent of like 250 to 300 tons TLI. Oh, dagnabbit. Oh, dagnabbit. I forgot. Yeah, Daz poked me and and I was going to get back to him today, and then I just. Oh, you're okay. Hey, Daz. Yeah, I was supposed to get back to you, and I didn't. And I'm sorry. It's been pretty crazy today, as it's been pretty crazy yesterday. And I guess I'm sort of too tired to actually speak cogently tonight on that, so I'll just PM you tomorrow. I hope that's okay. Yeah, no, actually, so some of the response is just I believe like half that's covered in the dev notes, but I will package it up for you tomorrow. Yeah, yeah, no, 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 they're valid, and we've answered some of them, and some of them actually, you know what? What the heck? It's given that I've talked about it on Squadcast, let me quickly go over it, and it may answer some of your viewers' questions as well. That's probably a profitable use of my time right now. So basically, the way the flow internally works is you have a set. Each part basically stores a link to everything it can crossfeed with. Um, and so let me give you a simple example. Like, here's a couple tanks. Okay, so, and let's stick an engine here. Whoa, that's interesting. All right, so yeah, so basically all four of these parts would have a link to exactly the same data structure, which is the set of all parts that part can crossfeed with. So that's just all it is. They also have priority numbers, which you can edit in here, which you've seen on Squadcasts. And basically, this engine will go ahead and look through all the parts it can crossfeed with. It will find the part or parts with the highest priority, and it will draw equally from them first. And so that's that. There isn't a question of hops at all anymore, or distance from the part or anything. There's no distance. All that matters is priority. So that's the main thing to know about that. The only difference between an engine that cares about crossfeed and something that doesn't is something that doesn't just has all parts in the vessel in this set of parts it can talk to. So all parts in the vessel will have a link to their vessel part set, and will draw in the same way of priority order. Basically, it's trying to make fuel flow much more coherent. So yeah, so that's the quick TLDR, and the rest of it I'll get back to you on tomorrow. Okay, so I think what I want to make, something quintessentially American. So I think what this is going to be is basically, so this is a neat bit of history for you guys. Yeah, there's a big performance increase because not just because it's simpler, but also because it's cached. Because you don't have to. Basically, the way it works now is all the stuff I just described. Every single part has to do every frame that it wants a resource. Now it's all done and it's shared between all those parts, and it's created only when parts modify. So it just goes to look up existing set of stuff. It doesn't have to recreate it each time. So that's the main savings. And it also will only check the parts that it knows it has to hit. It checks them in priority order. It's great. It's super fast. We had like a doubling of frame rate from that asparagus thing that we tested on Squadcast. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, let me give you guys a little bit of history. A little bit of history is you guys have obviously heard of NASA's SLS. What you may not know is that is not the first launch vehicle, or launch vehicle family in this case, to have the name SLS. The U.S. Air Force in the late 50s, because everybody was doing this in the late 50s, basically all three services, not counting the Marine Corps because they were and still are part of the Navy, all three services had lunar programs in the late 1950s. And the Army, of course, had Project Horizon, which was a moon base for Army soldiers, and it was for that purpose that the Saturn was designed. The Saturn C1 was designed for Earth orbit rendezvous. They do like 100, literally 100, I'm not kidding, Saturn C1 launches to build, all the space infrastructure to then send stuff out to the moon to make an Army moon base. So that was Project Horizon. That was the Army's. The Navy also had a lunar landing program that didn't get a lot of press. The Air Force had Project Lunex for lunar exploration. They had a swanky lifting body, because lifting bodies were all the rage. as their capsule, because the Air Force is going to have wings. That's how it works. And to put that thing, obviously they were thinking about direct descent. So they had, basically like you think of your average modern lifting body. It looked sort of like a modern lifting body. And to get then under that, the landing engine, which was also going to be the ascent engine, was the RL-10. What we now know is the RL-10. At that point, it was the XLR-115. It later became the LR-119. So that was going to serve that purpose. To get that stacked TLI, they designed a series of launch vehicles called the Space Launch System. And those vehicles were, the smallest was designed to put the Dynawing. I don't know whether you guys know about the Dynawing, but the Dynawing was the Air Force's their idea for a human orbital spacecraft. Downside of the Dynawing, of course, was that massed about 6 tons and could do a little more than Mercury. So eventually McNamara canceled it, but it reached the mock-up stage. The Dynawing was a lineal descendant of Sanger's Silverbird from the 1940s, the German atmospheric skipping bomber, basically. So at the low end, the Space Launch System was going to launch Dynawing. At the medium end, it was going to put Lunex into orbit and do various other neat things. And at the high end, it was going to send this entire, like, 50, 60 ton stack spacecraft to the moon. To do that, it basically involved a series of hydrolox cores, and then some giant segmented solid boosters. Shockingly enough, rather like the current space launching system. It was basically, and like Ariane 5, and like all the modern boosted hydrolox things. The difference was that the core did not ground light; the core air lit. And for that purpose, they were going to use the J2 for the smaller ones, and then 2 J2s on the medium-sized core, and then 2 M1s on the big core. So all your favorite food groups of engines were involved in this thing. So we're going to build the simplest. And if you've seen the Ares mission that Ferriman, I, and some other people did, you will have basically seen this launch vehicle, although we use the LR-87 LH2 in that use. So let's go ahead and let's put some... Yeah, if I were slightly better with alt-tabbing and stuff, I'd bring up some pictures of it. Maybe I'll do that later, because Encyclopedia Astronautica has some neat pictures of it that Mark Wade drew. But let's add some... we want tank type service module. We want to add some lead ballast. I think this will get about 10 tons to orbit. So let's... No, that's too little. What are we looking at? That's 4 tons. Yeah, it's about 10 tons. And let's add some electric charge so we don't run out of electric charge. Okay. So that's reasonably close to 10 tons. I think it's going to be about 10 tons to orbit. Now we need a fairing base. Fairing bases, and this is going to be a 15-foot core. So 4.57. Okay, now let's add, we want to add a nice upper tank dome. I guess we can leave it at type default, but we can up the utilization. We want smooth cone, this, and what's a good color for this? What about Soyuz green? Nice and domey. Okay. And put another tank down here of 4.57. I'm using the full RSS RP0 stack of mods. So our RSS is real solar system. It means we're playing in the real solar system with real sizes, real masses, real height maps, and textures. Then RO is realism overhaul. It gives all the parts real stats. It sizes them correctly. It does all that stuff. It involves also another suite of mods like FAR and deadly reentry and basically anything real fuels, anything you shake a stick at. And RP0, Realistic Progression 0, is the campaign mod. It makes for a real space race campaign where it properly prices and places the real J2 engines and the early engines like the R7's engines and all that stuff. It adds contracts for all that. Thank you, Specimen Spiff. Yes, Scott Manley played basically that mod set, although he, no disrespect to him, but he is not by temperament a realism overhaul player, so his launch vehicles and craft ended up looking really, really funky, and he didn't understand how some of the stuff worked, which led to some interesting things happening. Yeah, because a lot of times he would talk about a bug, and spoiler, it wasn't actually a bug. He didn't actually know how it worked, so he thought it was a bug. So, yeah. Okay, let's put some retros on here. Yeah, no, man mission, crewed Mars missions are totally possible. I mean, I talked about Ares before. If somebody wants to link Ares, that would be awesome. Scott is amazing at orbital mechanics and getting the most out of KSP itself. So I wouldn't claim that I'm better at him. I mean, I feel like given my experience in Realism Overhaul, I'm probably better at designing craft and launch vehicles than him, and maybe some of the quirks of flying them, but I certainly wouldn't say that I'm better at KSP generally than him. So let's give this some nice Merkin textures. I guess it's a double tank because it's not common bulkhead. So we'll go with that. Let's see, this needs to be longer. And we need to put where are you? Interstage. So we're going to reverse it on here. And fewer nodes, disable staging, toggle crossfeed, 4.57, and I guess we'll do a non-sloped boat tail. Hey, so Curious Metaphor on the forums did a crewed mission to Pluto in RSS. Yes, I definitely recommend MechJeb. MechJeb is a wonderful mod. I use the heck out of it. It's an amazing tour de force in programming and optimization and doing a lot of stuff. It takes, for me, some of the tedium and unrealism out of KSP by the way I think of MechJeb. For those of you who are new to the stream, you may not have heard me give this rant. For the regulars, you probably have. The way I think of MechJeb, I genuinely think of MechJeb as a realism mod, because in real life, if you want, for example, to set up to get your probe, onto a translunar trajectory, you're like if you're the flight director, you don't immediately go to some graph paper and start jotting down notes. You talk to your trajectory team and you say, hey guys, I need a translunar trajectory. And they crunch some numbers and they give it to you. And then you talk to guidance and say, okay, guidance, here's this trajectory, fly it. So if you want to play flight director, then I think MechJeb is a wonderful mod. If you want to literally do everything yourself, then obviously MechJeb is not going to be your cup of tea. All right, so let's call this Sls A. All right, now let's go ahead and we're going to use the early version of the J2, the 200,000 pound force version, which has less thrust. That was the original thrust specification for the J2. Oh, awesome! Thanks so much. I have to say, if not for RSS and the RS Suite, I probably would have stopped playing KSP about 2 years ago. KSP itself is a really fun game, and I obviously highly recommend it. I mean, I code for it. I wouldn't if I didn't find it super fun. But RSS is definitely an acquired taste, but I think it makes everything a whole lot more fun. It's certainly harder in many ways. It's easier in some ways too. It's interesting. Yeah, I recommend if you're getting started there, definitely watch that tutorial series. It'll help you get started. It covers a lot of early stuff. Okay, so we're looking at, let's increase this up. I think that's good. So how much locks is that? That's 44700. We'll over provision a little bit. So now we'll set this to 44700, and we will add extra liquid hydrogen. That's because we're going to get boil off during ascent. So if you don't like real-world planets, use Realism Overhaul, but get the 10x Kerbal system. It's basically the same scales as RSS, but it still uses your old familiar planets. And that may make more sense for you if you want to do that. All right, so now we're faced with a problem, which is this J2. They don't name more than one of it, so we're going to need some kind of roll control. So let's add some roll control. We will, I think, it's interesting, I'm broadly doing the exact same design choices I made the last time I tried to replicate this thing. It's because it's sort of objectively they're the correct design choices. Let's make this bipropellant. So we want MMH and NTO. It's a good bipropellant. We'll go with TL3. No, we'll go with TL2, actually. That's fair, because we're using this early J2. Oh, thanks for linking that tutorial campaign. That's helpful. Yeah, because I'm in this tab making the launch vehicle. I'm not in the chat tab at the moment, so. That's supremely helpful, thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and move these out. Okay. And let's go ahead and add some propellant tanks. I think we only need 2 of them, really. So we'll not quite have identical moment of inertia in both axes, but that's okay. We'll deal. We don't need much. I think 300 is going to be fine. Set it to service module, up the utilization, and we'll make it nice and gold foil. Okay, that's going to be plenty for... That's going to be plenty of roll control propellant. Note that we have pitch yaw. We have 3-axis stability with this RCS setup. What we don't have is any way to translate, but that's okay because we can't relight the engines, so we don't actually need to provide ullage. So we're going to add a boat tail, and I think actually here's what we're going to do. We're going to do it Saturn II style, where there's this thing that all decouples together. Just go with delta fairings for now. Next texture, that's way too long. Let's move the height back some. There, that looks about right. Okay. All right, so you note we have just over 6 kilometers per second of delta V. That ain't gonna cut it. That ain't gonna cut it at all. Also, we'll set the... I should have done this to the first. Disable that RCS port for now. Put these back in 4x symmetry. And bring them out again. Okay, that is not quite far enough out. Let's solve that problem. All right, that's fair. So they're disabled until we stage. That's cool. And yes, so we'll drop the boat tail and stage the RCS at the same time. Okay, let's go ahead and now we'll go ahead and just add, nope, that's in 2x symmetry, and change the staging on this. Okay, and that delta V is staying broadly the same. That's cool. Yeah, I gotta say, I'm biased, obviously, but I do tend to think that realism overhaul launch vehicles are prettier because, I mean, real launch vehicles are generally prettier, and what you're going to end up with is pretty close to a real launch vehicle. It's a different style. I mean, if you like the KSP cartoony style, yes, there is a place to get them all. You can get them from CCAN. If you select Realistic Progression 0 on the CCAN, and you accept all the defaults and choose a texture resolution when asked, then it will just automatically install it all for you, and you'll be ready to go. It's really that simple. It's great. All right, so we're going to need some decouplers. And where's the M, L, there we are. Okay. So we'll go with 4 solids. Yeah, it is a totally different graphical style. And I think we'll go with the, I mean, we could go with M55s. We could go with 8 of them. Let's see what our delta V is like in that case. Where's the M55? Caster. K. M55. All right. How is our delta V looking? Oh, because it thinks we're ground lighting. We're not ground lighting. Let's fix staging. All right. That is disgustingly little delta V. So we can't quite make our payload target. Let's turn it down some. I'm going to estimate that it's only going to take us about 9 point, yeah, something like that. How much payload is that really? Not as much as I would have hoped. 7.5 tons of payload. Skinny SRBs, the man's ass. Well, here's the Caster 1. I would call that a skinny SRB. Well, I mean, you want the ultimate in skinny? How about the Baby Sergeant? That's pretty skinny. I think you can say. So, yeah. That's pretty skinny. Okay, so little tidbit on the utilization slider. So you saw how I made this tank dome up here. That's because when we say, so KSP makes you think that rocket tanks are like oil drums. They're not. They're actually capsule tanks. So if you wonder what's actually inside the rocket stage, it's going to look something like this. Let's go down to one of you, make you nice and big. Go to a fillet cylinder. And we'll get something so you can see. All right, so what's actually inside that shell is something that looks about like this. Okay, there's one here, and then there's one down here. And you'll notice that this is nice and flat, and up here there's crenellations. And that's because this is actually the wall of the tank, but the tank starts to dome right here. It goes up into this dome that you can see. And so what's above it are the forward skirt. This is the intertank down here. It's where this capsule, the oxidizer tank ends and the fuel tank begins. The dome part is inside there. And then it's actually much shorter. It's like about like that, call it. And then this becomes the aft skirt. Okay, so what that means is that if you just counted this as a cylinder, you'd far overstate the actual volume available for your propellants. So the utilization slider means, okay, at 86, that means 86% of the cylindrical volume is actually used by real propellant tank. 86% is about right for a separate bulkhead tank like this, where there's one tank here, and then there's an intertank, and there's another tank. If you had a common bulkhead stage, where there wasn't this intertank, where basically they looked like this, where there would be an internal bulge like this, and then the bottom of this tank would actually be bulged inward instead of outward. That's called common bulkhead. That means you get better utilization. It's lighter, but it's harder to deal with. Because when you have a temperature difference, for example, if you have liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, there's a pretty extreme temperature difference between them. So they had to work really, really hard to make common bulkhead work on the S2 and the S4B. Okay, the extreme case is a balloon tank, where there's no stringers at all. It's literally all tank. That's when you set utilization to 100%. Now the Atlas and the Centaur both use balloon tanks, where every little bit of structure isn't, there aren't any stringers, there aren't any skirts, it's all just tank. And it's called a balloon tank because the tank walls are actually not strong enough to hold the thing up under their own strength. Instead, there has to be enough stuff in it under pressure, so the pressure itself holds the tanks rigid. So those are the cases. All right, so let's go ahead and add a procedural nose cone to these things. It's about 1.6 if memory serves. Yeah. That'll, I guess we can go with KH planes. That looks a little better because we're basically using bends. All right. Whoa, it's increasing with that bound. All right, that looks about right. Okie dokie. So the in-game effects are the higher the slider, the more volume you have available for a given dry mass, basically. So in game terms, it usually makes sense to max that, although it's not realistic. It's usually realistic to try to guesstimate what the actual utilization is given your configuration. Yeah, there are a lot of tank coloration options. All right, so let's add some clamps. And we want to enable the pumps just to keep the liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen topped off. Let's move this back down. And we're also going to need some little itty-bitty separation motors, I think, to get those boosters away from our core. So let's add that. Okay, limit the thrust. And what stage are they trying to engage on? They're trying to engage on the wrong stage. Right here. All right, and the clamps come down here. All right, let's try this feller out. Let's see what happens. I think we're still, I'm going to turn this down a little bit more just because that'll make me a little more comfortable. Although we do have a heck of a lift-off thrust-to-weight ratio, so we're not going to get much in the way of gravity losses. What's our final lineup? 7 tons. Let's see how this works. What have I forgotten? Have I made this fuel crossfeed? Yes, because otherwise MacJeb wouldn't tell me I have delta V. The solids light there. Then the decouplers. All right, that ignites. Then we get rid of our aft skirt, turn on the RCS for roll control. Fairing SEP. All right, I think we're good. Okay. So the interesting thing about this is that other than this, what we're doing right now is going to approximate the sort of the Saturn shuttle version, where you had a big first stage booster and then a long burning core. All right. Let's set up our turn. I think we want something like, probably near 180. And something like 45 there. And yeah, turn 0 meters per second velocity. Those are all just guess numbers. Let's see how this works. Well, that's certainly taking off quickly. Now, the interesting thing about this is it had a heck of a lift-off thrust-to-weight ratio, and it's certainly Certainly picking up some Mach effects, but doesn't have that much delta V on the first stage. I should have left the data displays on for Egg. I know he likes them a lot. All right, coming up on burnout. About 10 seconds to burnout. Okay, now the thrust is petering off. And so let's... Whoa, that was interesting. That was highly interesting. They had more thrust, residual thrust in them than I thought they would. So, yeah, let's turn these up a bit more. But otherwise successful. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to light that J2 before we decouple while we're still under thrust. Because we did it a little before decouple, but too soon. Oh, yeah, you're right. Daz, you're absolutely right. I should have moved them down some. But, I mean, given the angle of these separation motors, that will already angle them out. I mean, that's why I put the sep motors on. All right, let's try this thing again. Man, that lifts off fast. Also, it's really sort of short and stubby. Maybe I should have gone with a 12-foot diameter core. Yeah, no, I definitely... Oh, and I think I'll turn test flight off. For now. Yes, they weren't burned out properly because... Hi, Egg. Because I wanted to separate them while they still had a little propellant in them, so the separation motors would push them out and their remaining thrust would angle them. Would actually, like, drive them away from the launch vehicle. Solids in real life don't really burn out so much. They just kind of peter out slowly. So you decouple them once their thrust to weight ratio goes less than 1, because then they're harming more than helping. Okay, 9 seconds. I think at 5 seconds I'll light the J2. J2 ignition. Looking good. And let's decouple. Whoa, that's really weird. I think they're misplaced for those decouplers. I think that's what's going on. That's really weird. Anyway, I think we're high enough that we can drop the aft skirt. Let's turn on RCS. That was weird. It went... Oh, I know, because it has torque. I'll have to fix that too. Yeah, so let's just go ahead and fix these things. Yeah, the decoupler is too low in terms of mass. Center of mass. All right, let's move these down and let's move the decoupler up because we want them to be, yeah, a little. All right. That's fine. What was the other thing? Oh, yes, that's what I was going to do. Ejection torque, 0. Ejection power, turn up the ejection power. All right, let's try this one more time. And Egg, this time I will turn on the graphs because I care about you that much. It is true. This is not a career save. This is just a sandbox save that I'm messing around in. Basically, the story is I just finished probably 120 hours or so of tutorial campaign, and then the kind of crunch times hit. So then I kind of stopped. So I'm just just doing these just to, I'm just going to relax for a little bit more before I go to bed. Oh, the graph, the graph, the graph. Where's the graph? Flight recorder. Altitude, acceleration, surface and orbital speed, dynamic pressure, pitch. I don't think we care about angle. Well, I guess we might as well look at angle attack too. All right. There we go. Yeah, you're right about the nose cones. They don't weigh very much, but they weigh enough to shift it. Yeah, Des, there's absolutely no reason that you have to have any of these windows open. That's just because I like having them all open and because I like having MechJet fly for me. If you like flying for yourself, then there's no reason you need any of these windows open. Okay, 2 seconds, let's ignite the J2. Nope. That's really weird. The decoupler is apparently really causing problems there. Let's pitch up. Let's pitch up more. Because we're going really, really slowly. I set ejection torque to 0 and it still did that. That confuses me. Yes, I had set motors on the top of those things and they should have done their job. They did not. Okay, we're down to, at 10 pascals, I'll dump the fairings. Fairings dumped. So let's see how we do on orbital altitude. Let's pitch up a little bit more. Yes, I'm aware your dad has things named after him, but I didn't think that the unit of pressure was named after him. Hello. Yeah, so as you can see, now we've entered the slow portion of the ascent, because we've still got a ways to go. I mean, admittedly, this thing is only 6 minutes to orbit, which is crazy fast for a real-life launch vehicle. So, pitch down a little bit. Whoa. Yes, now our apogee is way high. Was not paying attention to pitch. So we'll pitch to almost nothing. In fact, we'll pitch to absolute nothing. We'll build up some steering losses because I goofed. We're going to launch too high. We'll come back down a little bit. KSP Interstellar is somewhat compatible with RO. I would hesitate to say it's fully compatible. What was that about? Oh, I forgot to turn test flight off. Whoops. So we'll fix it one more time. Apparently the decoupler needs to be really, really high. Yes, I doubt it likes Principia. Okay, and let's try making these much more, whoops, Um, let's try that. Well, that's actually probably going to burn through the tank, isn't it? Let's try that. And let's move these decouplers up. That's about right. All right. Staging was still correct, but what we're going to have to do, I guess, because it's just not going to behave otherwise, is put 2 of these on here. And let's set the ejection power back down to nothing. Oh, that's right. That's how I solved this problem. I forgot. I just put the ejection power to nothing. We only need 1 node now. So we don't get any torque because we don't have any force at all. Yes. Okay. I think that's going to work better. Yeah. Skirt's good. Okay. Principia is not yet a standard part of RO, but it's getting very close. However, I'm, as I've said to Egg in the past, somewhat hesitant to recommend inclusion of a mod in a game where that mod will crash you out to the desktop rather than recovering from failures. Okay. So the other thing we want to do, yeah, I think we want a slightly lower turn end, and let's go with 40. We're turn test flight off. I should just turn it off for the save, I guess. KSP Interstellar, first of all, just isn't that realistic. So already it's got a problem with... I mean, it's realistic in the sense that, like, a good science fiction novel that takes place in the next 2 centuries is realistic. It's not realistic in the sense that Realism Overhaul is realistic. Yeah, the problem with the sandbox game is you can do so much crazy stuff that it's really hard to fix all the issues. All right, J2 ignition. Okay, let's let the delta V get very, very low. Nope. There's still that really weird thing where they kick inward despite having those set motors. All right, so let's turn on the RCS, decouple that. Ah, that's the way that was supposed to look. Okay, so at least that bit's fixed. Realistic progression 0 is what you need to search for. Yeah, classical pronunciation all the way. I hold no truck with those medievalists. All right, yes, our dynamic pressure is low enough. Let's get rid of the fairings. No. You want realistic progression 0, not realism overhaul. You want realistic progression 0. That will pull in the right set of recommendeds. And it's probably going to be a better introduction to Realism Overhaul than being overwhelmed in Sandbox. Yep, this is about what the plume is going to look like. No, the Russians have not launched a nuclear thermal rocket, to my knowledge. All right, I'm just managing my pitch. So we try to insert at about 185 kilometers. Yeah, we only have 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, but over 4.5 kilometers per second of delta V. That's ridiculous. One minute to apogee, although that's lying because that's not going down at 1 second per second, so we're fine. Yes, they've experienced with, and I would be shocked if KSPIE accurately modeled either their power draw or their thrust. I assume it conforms broadly to KSP standards in that regard. Down pitched. Okay, it looks like we're going to space today. Just a little bit of pitch. Man, our gravity losses are low. Power of that. Okay, so what is the thrust from that MPD? Yeah, it could be an issue with the skirt. It could indeed be an issue with the skirt. Yes, how exactly do you plan to... Wait, it has a warp drive? Come on. Down pitch. Equal. And ugh, we came just short of orbital velocity. So, yeah. How much liquid hydrogen do we have left? A little over 2,000 liters. All right, we can optimize that out. Fairly good ascent. Not going to do that much better than those numbers. But we lacked about 10 meters per second of delta V. Oh well. I'm actually not unfamiliar with it back in the older days. I'm not ripping on it at all. I'm just saying that it doesn't fit with Realism Overhaul. I think it's a perfectly fun mod. A lot of people enjoy it. It's got some really neat stuff in it. All I'm saying is it doesn't really fit kind of what the project of Realism Overhaul is all about. That's my only point. Yes, I'm aware it's very different from the older days now, and it makes a lot of compatibility assumptions that come to bite other mods in the tail. Yeah, yeah. If you want that stuff, you probably got a better bet in your future. That's true. All right, let's try moving them out a little bit, and let's move the decouplers out a little bit and see if that makes a difference. The other thing we can do is let's see how negatively this affects our delta V. 9128 is where we are right now. Want to be about the center of mass. That costs 10 meters per second. These need to come down to this stage. Actually, we'll put them up here. And we need to actually align them quite well. Let's align these a little better. Yeah, it's not as philosophically incompatible as, for example, Kethane or Carbonite, where you have magic pixie dust resource. But it is somewhat philosophically incompatible, and that's fine. You know, to each their own. It's great. But we're really kind of embarked on different endeavors. All right, so that took our delta V down about 20 meters per second. I think I'm going to lengthen this stage a bit. We knew we had about 2,000 liters extra liquid hydrogen. Let's bring this down. 1. Fill the tank. And we'll go up to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Yes, as long as you launch it on the correct day or with the right command line argument, then the Uncat mod is indeed included with the realism overhaul. Yeah, Egg, that is the joke. All right, so that took our delta V up. So this will get us to orbit. Let's see if we've refined it enough to not make pretty explosions this time. Yeah, I gotta check how heavy that is burnout, because it should be about 50 tons. Was that about right with the pitch up we had? Let's go a little bit lower, and we'll over pitch a little bit if we have to. So, ugh, why did these uncheck? That's annoying. Right. Let's be off. Test flight. Gotta turn the test flight off. Really should just disable it in Space Center and then we'll be fine. Man, those curves are crazy. Alright, coming up on J2 ignition. J2 ignition. Okay, and couple. Yeah, I think they're hit. I think you're right that they're hitting the fairing base. It's the only thing that makes sense at this point. Yep, you're Kindle I go 8. You're absolutely right. That was the plan for that was the plan for the space launch system. I mean they were going to make their own solids and they were segmented. So using 8 M55s isn't quite right. Really, the thing would probably have about half again as much solid motor as we represented, with a 2-minute burn time. But this worked fine. Fairing sep. How's our pitch? Our pitch is fine. Yeah, I'll pitch up a little more. Man, we're fighting hard just to get our apogee up high enough. I guess I didn't have a high enough turn end altitude. To make the game look like that, you'll need to install, probably your best bet is currently RSSVE or something. If somebody can link that Phineas Freak fork, that would be awesome. Egg, yes, I definitely plan to. It's one of the things I'm very much looking forward to when I have an existence again. Whoa, those gravity losses are amazingly small. Maybe we could have done it with 5 minutes instead of 5.5 minutes on the core. Rendezvous as in rendezvous with another vessel, or set up an impact course for the moon? I certainly need the latter for the start of a campaign. I could probably get away without rendezvousing with another vessel for a while. Wait, if I have the latter, why don't I have the former? I'm confused. I thought you weren't making any distinctions between vessels and bodies. Okay, so we're picking up steering losses, but our gravity losses are shockingly low. Man. Look at those gravity losses. That's like 800 meters per second lower gravity losses than a more nominal ascent on a more regular launch vehicle. That's impressive. Pitch down a little bit more. Yeah, a little lower than our usual 100 nautical mile parking orbit. But it'll be okay. Oops. Dang, didn't pitch down in time, so we've got to pitch down now. Kill off that vertical speed. Okay. So, yeah, that was pretty good. Had about 30 meters per second spare. That was pretty good. Yeah, Ares 1 is basically the modern version of that. Yes, this is indeed the 50s space launch system. Okay, so that worked, and yeah, look at those gravity losses. Oh, I'm in love. That's so good. That is the power of a greater than 2 liftoff thrust to weight ratio. It's nuts. So get rid of the core, and there we are in orbit 7 tons. So that's fine. Next thing I want to quickly do is do the other end of it, which, oh, this has launch clamps on it. I think we want to keep those. Get rid of that, and we want to bring this down to only 4. How heavy is this? 71 tons. Interesting. So this is way more than the Sls A stage. I think it may have only been a 4-minute stage on a J2, which is nutsville. You want to take advantage of that sweet, sweet hydrolox specific impulse. No, that's what we had. Where's the UA? Nope. Nope. That's the that's the RSRM. That's not right. There's the UA 1205. All right. Okay, these are larger than the core, so maybe that's not the right idea. But that makes a big delta V difference. That certainly makes a big delta V difference. Yeah, we could do a bigger core. I mean, really, what we'd probably be doing is put a B core under it with the 2 J2s or a single M1 if we had an M1. And then we'd use maybe 6 UA 125s. And that would work about right. In case you're wondering, this is lying its head off because that's a thrust curve, so it'll actually probably peak at only about 5 or 6 Gs. So that should work. But sadly, it is 4 a.m., so I think I really should be heading off. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm zonked. I gotta throw in the towel. So hopefully I will again have some little time tomorrow night to do some bits. So hope to see you all then. Bye-bye.